Om Namo Bhagavate Vasudevaya. Om Namo Bhagavate Vasudevaya. Om Namo Bhagavate Vasudevaya. Om Namo Bhagavate Vasudevaya. Om Jnanam Timirandhasya Jnananjana Shalakaya Chakshurunmilitam Yena Tasmai Shri Gurave Namaha Shri Chaitanya Manobhishtam Sthapitam Yena Bhutale Swayam Rupa Kadam Mayam Dadati Swapadantikam. So the topic today is humility, and particularly humility. I focused on humility when it's difficult. So Chanakya Pandit writes, as gold is tested by rubbing on a jeweler's stone, a person's character is tested in adversity. So it is easy to be humble and honor others when they honor us. However, the test of humility is when we can honor those who dishonor us and practice humility amidst great suffering. So we all had this seminar was a 3-day seminar, and different speakers chose different aspects to focus on. And in my own life, I found that, this was the time, especially when humility is very difficult. And it's very difficult for us to stick to our principles. Our true nature gets revealed in times of adversity. And finding examples in scripture when devotees practiced humility even in times of adversity, personally, I find that to be most inspiring, right? Yes, it's very nice to find a very humble devotee, and that's so inspiring to read and discuss that. But especially when things are very difficult, when they are being dishonored, yet they continue to be humble and honor others, that is very difficult to find. And that those pastimes or those activities of devotees are very wonderful to hear about. So Srila Prabhupada often quoted Chanakya Pandit. Chanakya Pandit was one of the most amazing, most intelligent ministers in the history of Bharat Varsha. And he wrote this very famous quote, which Prabhupada quoted often. This is Srila Prabhupada's quote in some ways, because he quoted this from Chanakya Pandit. As gold is tested by rubbing on a jeweler's stone, a person's character is tested in adversity. We know truly a person by the way that they act in adversity. And then another, and this verse, the third verse of the Shikshashtaka is sort of the core of humility. It's the greatest teaching about humility. So it's important also that we remember and recite this verse. Trinadapi sunichena tarorapi sahishnuna amanina manadena kirtaniya sadahari. One can chant the holy name of the Lord in a humble state of mind, thinking himself lower than the straw in the street. One should be more tolerant than the tree, devoid of all sense of false prestige, and ready to offer all respects to others. In such a state of mind, one can chant the holy name of the Lord constantly. So, Lord Chaitanya encouraged all of his followers to take this mantra and put it on a locket. Take this verse and put it on a locket and string it around our neck. Because to achieve the Lord is very simple, yet it is very difficult. And the reason it is difficult is that it is difficult to practice this verse, being more humble than a blade of grass, or more humble than straw in the street, and more tolerant than the tree. Prabhupada says a tree is cut down in so many different ways, yet the tree is tolerant. Similarly, the straw in the street is trampled, yet the straw in the street remains humble. And so because it is difficult to practice this verse, and because it is so important, Srila Bhakti Siddhanta Saraswati Thakur says, this verse is the gateway into the higher realizations of Krishna's Leela. If we don't pass through this gateway, Krishna's Leela remain hidden. So the result of practicing this verse is that we get entrance into Krishna's Leela. We might be thinking that why aren't we in touch with Krishna's, the spiritual world, Krishna's pastimes? It is this verse that he's saying is the gateway that gives us entrance into Krishna's Leela. And Krishna is so pleased. Krishna becomes so pleased when we're able to practice this, that then he gives us the higher realizations of the spiritual world. Similarly, Sanatan Goswami also links humility with entering Vrindavan Leela in his Brihad Bhagavatamrita. So he also makes this same point, double confirmation. Very clearly, he makes it. And Srila Prabhupada himself, in a letter to Janaki, one of his disciples, he wrote, "So one who feels humble and meek has the door for the kingdom of God open for him or her." Srila Prabhupada, letter to Janaki, December 9th, 1968. So confirmed 3 times that this is actually the key into the spiritual world. And the reason is because it's the most difficult. We see in the examples of the great, great sages and saints like Durvasa Muni and all these Vishwamitra, that they had achieved every perfection in the world. They had become the greatest yogis, the greatest mystics, yet they could still not give up their pride. Yet they were still not able to practice this verse, Shikshashtaka, verse number 3. That's why Prabhupada said that the process of Bhakti Yoga is the most easy, yet it is also the most difficult. Because normally we are ready to give up everything, but we are unable to give up our pride. Krishnadas Kaviraj Goswami, in the Chaitanya Charitamrita, he writes in text 205, "I am more sinful than Jaga and Madhai, and even lower than the worms in stool. Anyone who hears my name loses the results of his pious activities. Anyone who utters my name becomes sinful." So similarly, Krishnadas Kaviraj Goswami, he gives us the ultimate standard of humility, where although being so exalted, he says, "I am even lower than the worms in stool." A devotee feels this way, that although I've received the mercy of the Lord, although I've received Krishna's mercy, still I am so fallen, I am so small, I'm so tiny, and still very unworthy servant of the Lord. So the Krishnadas Kaviraj Goswami, Srila Prabhupada explains, is not just saying this. He actually feels this way. He actually thinks of himself in this way. And in such a state of mind, what is Lord Chaitanya saying? We can chant the holy name of the Lord continuously and constantly, because in such a state of mind, no one can offend us. Why? Because we've already declared ourselves as the most fallen. Most of the time, the reason why we have challenges in our spiritual life, and this is a fact, right? We all can relate with it. The most of the time we have challenges in our spiritual life is because someone offends us. We get insulted, we get hurt, and rightfully so, we feel very hurt and offended. And of course, we cannot artificially practice these things. We cannot imitate these things. But if we work towards this consciousness, then no one will insult us. No one will offend us, because we will feel in this. We will feel in the same way that Krishnadas Kaviraj Goswami is feeling, and in this way, then we can chant the holy name of the Lord constantly, because there'll be no disturbance in our chanting, and also then. The holy name reveals itself to us, wholly and solely. It reveals itself to us because the holy name sees that this heart is ready. So it's not just that we can then chant because our mind is not disturbed, but also we can chant constantly because at that point we get the taste for the chanting automatically. One disciple of His Holiness Radhanath Swami told me that His Holiness Radhanath Swami said that he never gave a lecture on the holy name. Maybe this is not true now, but at that time when he told him, he said he never gave a lecture on the holy name. He only gave lectures on humility, because he said humility meant that is the qualification for chanting Krishna's holy names. That is what reveals the holy name of Krishna. Just like Bhaktisiddhanta Saraswati Thakur is saying that this is what reveals the spiritual world, Krishna's pastimes, all of these things. And also a final point on this verse, that many times, like for my own self, we try to practice humility partially. And for my own self, I realized this was something that I was doing unknowingly. We try to practice it partially, that, okay, yes, I am fallen, I'm humble, but, I'm still, not in this way, or in this way I'm qualified, or in this way I'm someone. But to really get the full thing, the full benefit, we have to practice humility wholly and solely. Like Krishnadas Kaviraj Goswami is saying, this is not just theory. He's saying it as an example for all of us. We have to practice abject humility, complete humility. And that humility allows us entrance into Krishna's pastimes. The Srimad Bhagavatam also tells us that gratitude is the bridge from the material world to the spiritual world. So just like we said, humility opens up the doors to the spiritual world. Gratitude also opens up or offers a bridge from the material world to the spiritual world. And we may wonder, where in the Bhagavatam is this said? There's a famous verse that quoted many times by Srila Prabhupada and the Goswamis, very famous verse. This is Canto 10, Chapter 14, Text 8, which is one of the verses in the prayers by Lord Brahma to Lord Krishna. And Lord Brahma, he says, Tatte nukampam susamikshyamano punjana yevatma kritam vipakam hridvagvapurbhir vidadan namaste jivetayo mukti pade sadaya bhav. My dear Lord, one who earnestly waits for you to bestow your causeless mercy upon him, all the while patiently suffering the reactions of his past misdeeds, and offering you respectful obeisances within his heart, words, and body, is surely eligible for liberation, for it has become his rightful claim. Very famous verse. In this verse, Lord Brahma is saying that one who awaits your causeless mercy while patiently suffering the reactions of his past misdeeds, for that person, liberation or the spiritual world becomes his rightful claim. So very clearly, this verse is saying that this process gives us entrance, or is the bridge to the spiritual world, like we said, right? But now we may ask, well, where's the gratitude part? I just mentioned how gratitude is a bridge to the spiritual world. And our acharyas, they explain that this verse, anukampam, it literally means thank you. Anukampam is a way of saying thank you in Sanskrit. It is your grace, thank you. Just like we say in Hindi, dhanyavad, it is my good fortune, and that's a way of saying thank you. So here Brahma is saying that the person who is suffering, the devotee who is suffering, and all the while suffering, he tells Krishna, thank you. Thank you, Krishna, for this suffering. That devotee becomes eligible for liberation. And liberation, in fact, becomes his or her rightful claim. That saying thank you and all the while offering you respectful obeisances, these two things make liberation their rightful claim. So that's not easy to do. That's very difficult to do. But a point here that's very important is that if someone just stays in Krishna consciousness, Prabhupada writes this in the purport. He says that if one simply remains alive in Krishna consciousness, liberation will become one's rightful claim. And why is that? Because just to stay alive in Krishna consciousness, the process is such, Krishna makes the bhakti yoga process in such that one will have to go through so many difficulties. And the only way to continue in that process is to go through those difficulties. And therefore, if someone has continued to stay a devotee, even after so many years, and here I mean a practicing active devotee, even after so many years, it shows that that person is grateful and humble. Because one cannot continue in spiritual life unless one is humble. Krishna makes this process in such a way that it purifies us and makes us humble. So years in Krishna consciousness is um, an indication, not a confirmation, but it is an indication of one's advancement. Because Prabhupada says that in this purport, if one simply stays alive in Krishna consciousness, somehow or the other, then liberation becomes the rightful claim, because it's not easy. So therefore, it is an indication of a person's advancement. So this slide is basically summarizing what I've just said, that one way to say thank you in Sanskrit is anukampitasmi or anugrihitosmi. Anukampita is a word in this verse, meaning I have been graced, I have been blessed by your mercy. Other languages also do this. I gave you the example of dhanyavad. In French, you have the word merci, which means thank you, but it also means mercy. This is mercy. Or in Spanish, gracias, in Italian as well. So one can translate 10:14:8 as an invitation to be grateful to the Lord and a promise that such a mood of gratitude guarantees one the attainment of Krishna's lotus feet. Right. So gratitude is a subset of humility. In order to be humble, we need to be grateful. And if we are humble, then we will be grateful, because we will realize that whatever we've received by the mercy of the Lord. Nothing actually is mine. There's nothing that I can claim that, this body is mine, my intelligence is mine, my resources are mine. Everything belongs to the Lord, and therefore I'm grateful to whatever the Lord has given me. In the Nectar of Devotion, Srila Prabhupada says that this statement, this verse that we just read of Srimad Bhagavatam, should be the guide of all devotees. So this verse is no ordinary verse. Prabhupada is saying this is the guide for all devotees. Prabhupada also writes in regards to this verse, a devotee regards danger as a good opportunity. Tatenu kampam shushamikshimanu. When a devotee is in great danger, he sees that danger to be the great mercy of the Lord, because it is an opportunity to think of the Lord very sincerely and with undiverted attention. He does not accuse the Supreme Personality of Godhead for having let his devotee fall into such a dangerous condition. Rather, he considers that dangerous condition to be due to his past misdeeds and takes it as an opportunity to pray to the Lord and offer thanks for having been given such an opportunity. So, as we may have experienced in our life, difficult times are great opportunities for spiritual advancement. So therefore, the devotee sees a difficult situation as a great opportunity, that now I can just think of the Lord without any difficulty, with undiverted attention. And therefore, he's grateful even for that difficult situation. So this is the relationship between gratitude and humility. So we are called to practice absolute humility and absolute gratitude. Gratitude means to thank Krishna deeply and genuinely for everything, whether seemingly good or bad, as the loving mercy of Krishna. Humility means to accept deeply and genuinely everything, whether seemingly good or bad, as the loving mercy of Krishna, and to engage everything in his service, knowing him to be the controller and enjoyer of everything. So, being grateful for Krishna giving us everything, we then engage everything in his service, knowing him to be the controller and enjoyer of everything, and that is humility. So, this is a little introduction to the main kind of theme, which is humility. And now I want to look at specific examples of this in the Srimad Bhagavatam, because this kind of now puts it into practice. The devotees of the Lord, how do they apply this principle in day-to-day life? How can we gain inspiration from the examples in the Bhagavatam for our own Krishna consciousness? So I'm just going to stop sharing my screen for a moment, and then I'm going to share another screen. So, sorry. So these are some examples of humble exchanges in the Srimad Bhagavatam. That well, specifically speaking, how do these devotees deal with challenging circumstances? Bhakti Vinod Thakur says, "Kita janma hoy yatha tu adas." Thus, he prays to take birth as an insignificant insect in the association of devotees. Because devotees are engaged in the service of the Lord, anyone who lives with them also lives in Vaikuntha. So, first of all, being in the association of devotees is the greatest benediction that a person can have. Because whenever we're in the association of devotees, we're living in Vaikuntha. And similarly, what is the greatest calamity? The greatest calamity that stops us from relishing the holy name is an offense to a great devotee. If we consider the bodily defects of a Vaishnava, we should understand that we are committing an offense at the lotus feet of the Vaishnava. Sri Chaitanya Mahaprabhu has described this offense as Hati Mata, the mad elephant offense. A mad elephant can create a disaster, especially when it enters into a nicely trimmed garden. So when we offend a devotee, or if someone offends us, we should know that the reaction will come. A devotee doesn't consider himself to be a devotee. But if someone does, offend us very badly and seems to get away with it, and, we are practicing devotees, we may feel very disturbed, but we should know that if there is an offense there, it is a law of nature. There's no roundabouts. There's no way to escape it. And there's so many pastimes in the Bhagavatam that illustrate this. The reaction will come. So we really don't have to worry about punishing that devotee in return, because the reaction will come. It's a law of nature. Krishna's justice is perfect, and it's especially perfect in relation to devotees. And this is why we have to be so careful when dealing with devotees, because the example that's given is like Maharaj Parikshit. Due to the plan of the Lord, he was very, very thirsty. And it's a medical fact that if you're thirsty, you lose your mind, if you're very thirsty. And so losing his mind, he puts a snake around this sage. And when he puts a snake around the sage, he leaves. And once he leaves and he finds water somewhere, he realizes what he's done. And we know how the sage's son Shringi then curses Parikshit to die in 7 days. And we also know how that was not the right curse. The sage, the Brahmana's son, was proud. It was too much, too heavy of a curse, and he was wrong. But Maharaj Parikshit, on his end, he knew, once he realized what he did, he knew that the reaction is going to come. Because especially if you offend a Brahmana Vaishnava, a senior Vaishnava like this, the reaction must come. It's a law of nature. He knew that it's going to come, so he was waiting that, okay, what will come? It was almost expected. And then news came that the Brahman boy had cursed him and he had to die in 7 days and 7 nights. So then, of course, the father chastises the son for doing this, that this was his pride. But Maharaj Parikshit, being such a great devotee, he could understand that there's Krishna's plan behind this. There's a reason why Krishna is doing this. So he leaves home and he hears Srimad Bhagavatam and he makes the whole world fortunate. So he understands the Lord's plan behind it. But the point being that he was expecting that some reaction is going to come. So pride and offenses separate us from Krishna, and humility and submission unite us with Krishna. It's a very common theme that you find throughout the pastimes. And before actually discussing the pastimes in Bhagavatam, this is one very small, short example, very important one, very short example from the Chaitanya Charitamrita that illustrates this point. Just this one slide before that. How do we get grateful joy of true humility? We begin by submitting ourselves to a spiritual master. To claim that we are God's servant is easy. The test is whether or not we can serve a servant of God. So serving the spiritual master is an exhibition of humility. And so this theme of union and separation is very nicely illustrated in the example of the three Puris, that is Madhavendra Puri, Ishwar Puri, and Ramachandra Puri. Madhavendra Puri was one of the predecessors of Lord Chaitanya. He was the first one to bring love of God to this world. He was Lord Chaitanya's spiritual master. Nitya Siddha, ecstatic devotee of the Lord. He revealed the Gopal deity, and so many other pastimes are there in Lord Chaitanya's, in the Chaitanya Charitamrita. So Madhavendra Puri is a Paramahansa, Prema Bhakta, pure devotee of the Lord. And he had two disciples. One disciple was Ishwar Puri, and the second disciple was Ramachandra Puri. Ishwar Puri was very dedicated to his spiritual master. And Ramachandra Puri was quite the opposite. He was very offensive to his spiritual master. And so one time when Madhavendra Puri was passing away from this world, Ramachandra, he was crying out of separation from Krishna. And when he was crying, he was calling out, oh Krishna, where are you? I don't see you. My life is useless. At that time, Ramachandra Puri came in and instructed Madhavendra Puri, why are you crying? Only those who are materialists, they are crying. Think of Brahman, Brahma Bhuta Prasannatma, Nashochati Nakangshati. And he began trying to instruct his spiritual master, which is a great offense. In the Nectar of Instruction, it is said that we should never discipline or instruct the spiritual master or the great Acharya. And so therefore, he lost his good qualities. On the other hand, Ishwar Puri became the spiritual master of even the Supreme Personality of Godhead, Lord Chaitanya. And why did he? The verse from the Chaitanya Charitamrita verses tell us, Ishwar Puri, the spiritual master of Sri Chaitanya Mahaprabhu, performed service to Madhavendra Puri, cleaning up his stool and urine with his own hand. He was so humble towards the spiritual master that he would even clean his spiritual master's stool and urine. And due to that humble service, he became the spiritual master of God. Union, right? Thus, Ishwar Puri became like an ocean of ecstatic love for Krishna. How did he get his ecstatic love for Krishna? Because of his humility, which begins, as that first slide mentioned, it begins from the spiritual master. Or it's a very important part of it is to the spiritual master. Whereas Ramachandra Puri became a dry speculator and a critic of everyone else. Ramachandra Puri got the exact opposite fruit. He offended everyone, but then he didn't get the fruit of love of God. Again, there's no shortcut, right? It's he chose that path, so he didn't get love for Krishna. So a very instructive message that that humility is difficult, but if we do it, there's a great blessing, a very great blessing. Seeing faults in a devotee is like criticizing the moon because it has spots on it. Why should we keep this poison within our hearts? Keeping that poison in our heart greatly displeases Krishna. We should pray to get rid of the poison. Getting rid of the poison is by taking shelter of the holy names. Sincere and serious chanting of the holy names helps us get rid of that poison, but ultimately we have to take shelter of that devotee, and we have to practice these principles as well. The teaching that Rupa Goswami gives us in the Nectar of Devotion is that we should consider ourselves to be the most fallen. My dear Lord, there's no sinful living entity who is more of a sinner than myself, nor is there a greater offender than myself. I am so greatly sinful and offensive that when I come to confess my sinful activities before you, I am ashamed. And along with humility, humility basically in times of adversity is tolerance. One has to practice tolerance. One's greatness has to be estimated by one's ability to tolerate difficult circumstances. This is something that Srila Prabhupada said, that a person's greatness can be estimated by their ability to tolerate difficult circumstances. Maya can break us from within, not from without. And Prabhupada defines tolerance as forgiveness. If we're truly tolerant, then we're able to forgive. Not just tolerate, but even forgive the miscreant. Chanakya Pandit says, another quote from Chanakya Pandit that Srila Prabhupada quotes very often, the beauty of a cuckoo bird is the sweetness of its song. The beauty of a woman is her chastity. An ugly person is beautiful if they are learned. And the beauty of a saintly person is their forgiveness. So now, one very nice pastime that illustrates relationships among devotees. Just one quick question. What time do we stop? Accordingly, I'll continue.
Yeah, probably usually 45 minutes to 50-minute class.
Okay, so maybe 5-10 more minutes, right? And then Q&A?
Yeah.
Yes. Okay. So the Srimad Bhagavatam 3:15, chapter 15, canto 3, it describes this very interesting situation where the four Kumaras, who are self-realized souls, great sages, but they look like little children, they show up at the door of Vaikuntha. And when they do, Jay and Vijay are standing there at the door. And when they see these children, they say, you cannot come in. They stop them. They say, you cannot come in because you don't look like us. You don't look like Vishnu Dutas or Lord Vishnu. And how can you walk in naked? So based upon their external circumstance, as Rupa Goswami was saying, the bodily defects of a devotee, Jay and Vijay stop them from coming in. And this is a great offense. There's many offenses to devotees, and one of the most greatest offense is to identify a devotee based upon their birth, based upon their caste, their South Indian or North Indian or American or African American, or their gender, their male or female, to judge them based upon externals. And so their offense is that in the absolute world, the world of Vaikuntha, the world of oneness of unity, oneness of desire, of intention, of pleasing the Lord, they are seeing difference. They're discriminating, they're seeing difference amongst people and devotees. And we make this mistake all the time in our movement, based upon, oh, is this a disciple of so-and-so who their spiritual master is, as I mentioned, what their nationality is, gender is. We discriminate. But once a devotee is a devotee, they're always a devotee. We can only see them as devotees. I remember one time in the Delhi temple, one devotee was causing difficulty, and he was from a very poor background, and he was even, getting in fights with devotees sometimes, even physically. And so some devotees went to my spiritual master, Gopal Krishna Goswami Maharaj, and they complained to him and said, this devotee is causing so much difficulty. And, all these problems are there. Really we have to do something or remove him from the temple. And in the course of complaining, one devotee said, Maharaj, he comes from a very low caste, kind of poor family. And I remember still to this day, the moment Gopal Krishna Maharaj heard this, he became like fire. He's like, how can you say that he's from a low caste? How can you say that he's coming from a poor family? Once a devotee is always a devotee. Yes, he has mistakes and we have to rectify those, but how can you identify him based upon his birth? And then he found a service for him that is giving Charanamrit, and he kept him in the temple. So Jain Vijay, they make the offense of discriminating based upon external experience against a devotee. And in response, the Kumaras, being great sages, they become angry. But they think, how can I rectify these people? So these are the verses that they say. In the Vaikuntha world, there's complete harmony between the residents and the Supreme Personality of Godhead, just as there's complete harmony within space between the big and the small skies. Why then is there a seed of fear in this field of harmony? These two persons are dressed like inhabitants of Vaikuntha, but where from can their disharmony come into existence? Therefore, let us consider how these two contaminated persons should be punished. The punishment should be apt, for their benefit can eventually be bestowed upon them. For thus benefit can eventually be bestowed upon them, since they find duality in the existence of Vaikuntha life. They are contaminated and should be removed from this place to the material world. So they do think about the benefit of these two individuals, and so they curse them to leave the spiritual world and come to the material world. When they do so, then the Lord appears on the scene. And then Krishna says a verse that is very telling for us, and this is, we're coming right to the end now. He's telling us how can we correct other devotees, because there are times when we do have to say something. There's a time when something has to be spoken, but then we also can't offend devotees. So how do we do it? Especially towards elderly devotees or senior devotees. How do we do it? He's saying, on the other hand, the devotees, captivate my heart, who are gladdened in heart, and who, their lotus faces enlightened by nectarian smiles, respect the Brahmanas, even though the Brahmanas utter harsh words. They look upon the Brahmanas as my own self and pacify them by praising them in loving words, even as a son would appease an angry father, or as I am pacifying you. So here Krishna is saying that even if a Brahmana or someone in a senior position does something wrong, we should not respond in an angry way. Rather, we should respond, but with pacifying words, by pacifying them. Prabhupada in the purport clarifies this point. I won't read the whole thing, but he makes this point very clear. Well, maybe I'll just read it and then we'll end. It has been observed in many instances in the Vedic scriptures that when the Brahmanas or Vaishnavas curse someone in an angry mood, the person who is cursed does not take it upon himself to treat the Brahmanas or Vaishnavas in the same way. There are many examples of this. For instance, the sons of Kuvera, when cursed by the great sage Narada, did not seek revenge in the same harsh way, but submitted Here also, when Jay and Vijay were cursed by the four Kumaras, they did not become harsh towards them. Rather, they submitted. That should be the way of treating Brahmanas and Vaishnavas. One may sometimes be faced with a grievous situation created by Brahmana, but instead of meeting him with a similar mood, one should try to pacify him with a smiling face and mild treatment. Brahmanas and Vaishnavas should be accepted as earthly representatives of Narayana. It is specifically said that to pacify the Brahmanas, one's face should be lotus-like. A lotus-like face is exhibited when one is adorned with love and affection. In this respect, the example of the fathers being angry at the son and the sons trying to pacify the father with smiling and sweet words is very appropriate. So Lord Vishnu, he shows this by example, because when he comes to the scene, he tells the Kumaras, he says that what the punishment you've given to Jay and Vijay, I approve of that. They have offended you, and you were correct in doing that. At the same time, Lord Vishnu says in a very pleasing way, he says, the Jay and Vijay are like my arms. And so their offense is my offense to you. And therefore, please shorten their stay away from me. Please reduce your curse. And by saying that Jay and Vijay are his arms, what does he do? He embarrasses the four Kumaras. He also indirectly chastises them, but he does so in an indirect way. He by pacifying them, but also telling them that, no, these are also dear to me, these servants of mine, and we should never curse a devotee. Right? So Jay and Vijay are wrong because they're offending them. The offense starts with them. They stop them. But then the four Kumaras, they also should not curse a devotee. They also, took a little more too extreme of action. So in both sides, the Lord shows that how in devotees, when most of our difficulties are between devotees, right? That both sides have to be generous and humble. Both sides have to step forward, and the junior devotee or the newer devotee takes a humble approach, it pacifies, but then the senior devotee also avoids being too angry. And in this way, Jay and Vijay and the four Kumaras, both of them, they made advancement as a result of this experience. And Prabhupada is showing us the way how to practice humble exchanges. So we've covered a lot here, many examples and many points. And now I will stop and we can open it for discussion. Hare Krishna.
Hare Krishna. Thank you, Prabhuji. Before we open the floor for the questions, I would actually request everybody to collect your questions. And Prabhuji, if I have your permission, may I just give a short rundown of our activities at the center? So I'll just take hardly a minute, and then we'll get back to the questions. So okay, so the Wednesday Sangha is one of the popular activity, and we'll continue that next week at the same time, Wednesday. And this is the last Wednesday of 2021, and we are going to be celebrating this Friday the New Year celebration. The event will be on Zoom, on the same Zoom channel. There'll be a lot of skit, dance, and many fun activities along with the spiritual discourse. And did I hear anybody saying something? Sorry, I got some noise distractions. Maybe I'll just share the screen. Maybe it's easier for everybody to follow through what I'm talking. So my screen is visible?
Yes.
Okay. So The next important program is the New Year celebration. I just elaborated that. And the Sunday program is at the center. Um, and
Guru, just one correction. It's Sunday program is going to be virtual.
Oh, okay. So Sunday program is also virtual. That's going to be on the same Zoom, and the timing will be same, 5:15 p.m. And it will be a mix of the discourse and the discussion and the fun activities. Really. In addition to that, we do the daily Japa Sangha in the morning, 6 a.m. to 8 every day. So on the same Zoom, and I would like to request those who can join. That'll be a wonderful Sangha. And we do the read Bhagavad Gita every day, Monday to Friday on the working days, 12 p.m. noon to 12:15 p.m. So you can join on the same Zoom as well. So with that, thank you so much. Now I'll just switch back to the questions, and sorry I took a little bit longer time. All right, so such a beautiful topic, humility. It so happened that the last Wednesday also we had topic on humility.
Oh, really?
Yeah, it was it last? It was on December 15, and I was hosting that as well. So that was nice. So I think we are blessed with this such a nice discourse on such an important topic. Actually, that was 2 weeks back. So thank you, Ramchandra Prabhu, for correcting me. 2 weeks back about so that kind of like Krishna is giving us the hint that how important this topic is, and probably we need to reflect on it a lot of things. I'm pretty sure people have a lot of questions as well. So I would open the floor for the questions. Anybody has, please raise your hand, and we can take the questions. Shraddha Mataji, go ahead.
Hare Krishna Prabhu, thank you so much for deliberating on this wonderful topic, something which is very, very integral to our devotional service. As you said, most of us do feel that, okay, I'm humble, I'm trying to practice, but at some points we say, but I'm still better here, at least, not that bad. But yeah, as you said, I really like the expression that you use, that we need to practice humility, abject humility. So thank you so much. So Prabhu, I have two questions. My first question is, in one of your slides, one of the statements said that Maya can break us from within, but not from without. Could you elaborate a little bit on that part, please?
Yeah. Actually, let me share one slide that elaborates on this. Wait, it's here. Yes. So Bhaktisiddhanta Saraswati Thakur says, when faults in others misguide and delude you, have patience, introspect, find faults in yourself. Know that others cannot harm you unless you harm yourself. So this is also a kind of a difficult statement to understand. In the ultimate sense, the devotee knows that everything is, that Krishna is my protector, right? Krishna is my protector, and for devotees is different. It's not karma, but a devotee often thinks that what they're getting is their karma. Is that in the ultimate sense, there's something that I have done which is causing me this challenge or this difficult time. And if I remain Krishna conscious and if I do the right thing, ultimately others cannot affect me. And this is what it means, that Maya can break us from within, but not from without. That if we develop the qualities of envy, greed, malice, anger, then we can break away from the community of devotees, or a community of devotees can break apart. But if influences come from the outside, like a materialist trying to attack, then that actually cannot harm a devotee, because Krishna is in control. Krishna will protect us. It's only our own, you could say, lack of Krishna consciousness, our own shortcomings or desires, material desires, that actually cause us difficulty in our spiritual life. So, a very, great example of this, so one that we cannot imitate, is like Haridas Thakur. Right? Haridas Thakur was beaten in 21 marketplaces, yet they were not able to affect him. Why? Because he was constantly chanting the holy name of Krishna. So now, of course, he's a great pure devotee. We cannot imitate him, but the principle is there, that people externally may attack us, but if we are fully fixed in our service to Krishna and we are chanting the holy names of Krishna, ultimately they cannot affect us. It is our own, from within, our material desires and things that can affect us.
All right, Prabhu. So I understand it in this way, that if we are fortified internally in our Krishna consciousness, then no matter what the externals are, we will not break down. But if the internal is not fortified, then we have all the reasons to break down. So
yes. And see, what is success? What is success? Success is when we are able to keep to our spiritual principles, right? When we are able to keep to our Krishna consciousness. So externally, the devotee may even die. Externally, but if they keep to their Krishna consciousness, then that's success for them. That is the greatest success, because they have, they're not afraid. Like Lord Ram, when he left home, it was very unglorious, right? He was not able to be king, but that was not a lack of glory. That was glory, actually, because he kept his word of honor. He was afraid of infamy, which meant that him breaking his word of honor. So the external circumstance didn't matter to him so much. What mattered to him more was his internal, like you're saying, fortification. Yes.
Sure, Prabhuji. So, Prabhuji, my second question would be is that you mentioned that we should not discriminate on the basis of caste and birth and place of birth, nationality, so on and so forth. But we see that in Jagannath Puri, there is this, non-Indians cannot enter the temple. Now, should we actually see it as one of the offenses that's going on in there, which is in practice? Because again, it's the body skin that's preventing so many devotees to enter one of the dhams of Krishna. So how to understand this part?
Yes, and Prabhupada was very explicit about this. He, among all the practices, he found that to be most offensive. He said, how can they stop devotees of Lord Jagannath from entering the temple simply on the basis of the color of their skin? He said, how can they stop my disciples, my Western disciples, from going in? And he said, this offense is so great that one day Lord Jagannath will walk out of that temple if they don't change it. And from what I heard, actually, recently they changed the rule. So it actually is, I think, now open for everyone. So it might have changed.
And that's wonderful to hear. Thank you so much, Prabhu. Thank you so much. Hare Krishna.
Thank you, Shraddha Mataji. Poonam Mataji, you have a question?
Hare Krishna.
Hare Krishna.
It was a wonderful presentation. I liked it, and it's really enlightening for everybody. I believe so. So just wondering, you said in I think last slides, it was shown that all Brahmanas and Vaishnavas should be treated as like a representative of Narayana. How does it apply in other religion, where this type of, distinction is present in Hindu system, right? But this is not present in other religion. So what is your comment on that?
Yeah. So sometimes Brahmanas A Brahmana basically means one who knows Brahman. Brahmana, a true Brahmana is one who knows Brahman, meaning a true Brahmana is a devotee of the Lord. Sometimes Brahmana also refers to caste Brahmanas. And that's also true. We should be careful because they're still, they're still offering worship to the Lord. But that's not the key thing here. The key thing here is that we should not offend a devotee of the Lord. So this means in every religious tradition, if someone is a great devotee and is a Christian, or someone is a great devotee and is a Muslim, and they're truly practicing, then the same principle applies. We should especially be careful not to offend them, because they are devoted to the Lord, and the Lord says that I am in their heart and the Vaishnavas are in my heart. So Prabhupada said that Christianity is Vaishnavism when practiced properly. And he said Lord Jesus Christ was his god brother. So Lord Jesus Christ also is a pure devotee. So we never criticize Christ. We may criticize the practices of contemporary followers that they're not practicing, but we never criticize Christ.
Okay. So at the same time, we study in Gita verse, like they say, the Lord, the person who is enlightened will treat everybody same, like, friend or enemy, they will treat the same way. Then what should we do? Like you are saying, specifically for Brahmana, who is, basically devotee of God, should not be offended. What about other people who are really not, but then...
Yes, but we should not offend them either. So
Okay.
it begins. The key point is that at least, and the reaction is especially severe if we offend a devotee, because the devotee is dear to Krishna. But the key teaching is that a devotee does not have friends or enemies. That's the point. The devotee does not have friends or enemies. The devotee doesn't see people as friends and enemies, but the devotee does make distinctions. The devotee does see that, okay, this person is more spiritually advanced, or this person is being envious or being very cruel, and so I need to say something. But it's not on the basis of, well, this person is my friend, so I support them. That's the point. It's not that you have friends or enemies. They see every person equally as a pure spirit soul. But then if that pure spirit soul is presently acting in a bad way, the devotee will take that into consideration. So the devotee also discriminates, also has intelligence. And the devotee doesn't want to offend anyone. The devotee will not offend people, but the devotee also understands that what that means is also, not when a devotee is insulted, another devotee can get angry. Prabhupada says we should get angry. That's because the devotee also does the right thing.
Okay. So we can get angry. That's what, okay.
So on his own account, if a devotee is very tolerant, they just tolerate. But even for themselves, I mean, they have to be practical. This body is for Krishna's service, so I cannot allow it to be harmed. And especially for others. This is the teaching of the Gita, right? Arjuna, out of his humility and compassion, doesn't want to fight. But Krishna is telling him, no, true humility is fighting, because you have to protect the weak from the strong when all good argument fails.
Okay.
You have to do your duty. You have to protect these people from being annihilated.
Okay. Thank you.
Thank you. Nice points. Nice question.
Thank you, Paramataji. Let me see. If anybody has questions, please raise the hand so I know I can ask you.
Paul Prabhakar Prabhu has a question. He's raised his hand.
Oh, Prabhakar Prabhu?
Yeah.
Go ahead, unmute Prabhakar Prabhu. Oh, I think usually he has unmute problem. So let's see. Are you able to unmute Prabhakar Prabhu?
No, I mean. Okay.
Okay, now he's able to. Okay, go ahead, Prabhakar Prabhu.
We still can't hear you.
All right, so while Prabhakar Prabhu is getting ready, Gail Mataji, you have something to ask?
Hare Krishna. Thank you.
Hare
Yes. Would you
Go ahead.
please distinguish between being discriminatory and being judgmental?
Mm. Yes, very nice point. So actually, this is one point that I make that that I didn't get a chance to cover it. That when we are, when we are pointing out a flaw to a devotee, or so to say, when we are making a complaint, then a nice way to make it is to tell the devotee the effect that their actions or words are having on us, right, or on someone else. That your words come across like this, or when you said this, it made me feel very depressed. So in this way, we are identifying, look, this is the problem, or it made that devotee feel very bad. But at the same time, we're not passing judgment. I mean, who are we to say whether they were bad or they had bad intention or this or that? So we can still identify the problem, try to rectify it without, like you're saying, passing judgment. Because this is a true statement. The way you feel is true. What they did, you may not know what was right or wrong, what they said, or what they did, what their motivation was. But one thing you do know is that this is the way their words or actions made you feel. So I find, especially in dealing with senior devotees, this is a nice way. Like, rather than going and criticizing them or judging them, is to say, Prabhu, when you said this, it really made me feel depressed, or I didn't understand why you said this. Because you are not criticizing, you're asking for clarification. At the same time, you're identifying, you're trying to rectify the situation, or you're identifying the situation. So yes, how we present things, how we talk to devotees is a great art, and we can practice it. It's something very, this was one of Prabhupada's qualities that his disciples said, is that he was so sensitive, he was so in tune with people, and he just knew how to talk to people. And that takes advancement, and it doesn't come to us overnight, but it's something that we can meditate on. Is, okay, how can I solve the problem? How can I identify something and deal with something, but if I do it nicely, also not offend the devotee or pass judgment? Because I'm not in that position to know. Like, the spiritual master may know because he's far more spiritually advanced than the disciple, but I may not know. It's not my position, it's not my role to correct this devotee. So I can't judge that devotee, but I can discriminate and say, look, this thing didn't come across in the right way, and let the devotee know in a respectful way. Does that, or did you have other thoughts?
Thank you, Prabhu. Yeah, I did have other thoughts, but because this word judgment is always a little bit problematic for me,
Mm.
So the way you seem to define judgment just now is that, is to try to infer what a person's motive is by their action, instead of focusing on your own reaction to the person's behavior. Just because, for example, you felt offended or something, doesn't mean that the person necessarily was trying to offend you. Just that's how you. So when you try to assess someone else's motive, that's called judgment, I think you're saying.
Yes. Yeah. And that's
Yeah.
that's my understanding, but there's other understandings also. But basically, it's like I was meditating on this, how to do the right thing at the same time, not offend a devotee. And this goes back to the story of Jay and Vijay and the Kumaras, that, okay, Krishna's telling both sides, like, okay, Jay and Vijay, obviously they're wrong, you should not do this, they offended them. But also to the Kumaras, that, okay, don't curse a devotee. As Lord Jesus Christ said, hate the sin, not the sinner. Okay, I can't pass judgment on this devotee. I can't say they're advanced or fallen, because I'm very minute. I don't know them, but I can still deal with the problem. Go ahead.
Yeah. So yeah, I think this last part was more along the lines of how I was thinking that to judge somebody is to like sum up their whole personality by one label, and not recognize that, yes, they did this or that, but that's just one aspect maybe of who they are. It's not the whole person. So I was thinking of judgment more along those lines. I don't know if you would agree with that. To say a person is this or that, and to see the whole person in terms of your particular criticism of them, without recognizing that there are other very wonderful parts of that person too, not just. So to me, I was thinking that judgment would be something like that, but discrimination would be to recognize that the sin, recognize that something that they did is indeed sinful. We don't have to deny that, but to make that distinction, I'm thinking discrimination is something like that. So as you can see, I'm wrestling with these terms. Yeah.
Yes, a very nice point. Thank you for your comment and for bringing this point up. I agree with you. There's one writer who says, I forget which name, he says, people cannot be judged by the worst thing that they do, right? And sometimes they do need to be judged if it's really bad, but by that, but the point is that we tend to just see the worst thing that they do. And gratefulness means also seeing the good things that they do. And especially in terms of devotees, we forget that, okay, this devotee's also done very nice service. They made a mistake, but I just can't see, I have to see the positive side also. Madhava, do you have a question or comment?
Hare Krishna Prabhuji. Thank you for the wonderful class. My question was, is that what is the test? How can we see if in our attempt in the process of trying to be humble, we are actually being humble, or we're falling more to the inferiority, I can't say the word, inferiority complex side?
Yes. So in humility, there's also a lot of confidence, because one knows I'm a servant of Krishna, and because I'm a servant, there's no one can like I can really serve because I'm a servant. One devotee wrote to his spiritual master that, Guru Maharaj, I don't feel qualified for any service. As an expression of his humility, he said, Guru Maharaj, I don't feel qualified as any service. And his spiritual master wrote back saying that this is not spiritual humility, because true humility, true spiritual humility takes us closer to Krishna. And if your humility is making you feel that I'm not a servant, then what are you? If it's making you feel I'm not a servant of Krishna, then it's materialistic humility. And we can have materialistic humility, like we're humble to someone because of a fruitive mentality. Let me be humble so then they'll do something good for me. Let me express my gratefulness so that they keep doing nice things to me. That's the material level of humility and gratefulness. So we don't want material humility or material gratefulness. We want spiritual humility and spiritual gratefulness. And the key characteristic of spiritual humility is that it brings us closer to Krishna. It makes us more enthusiastic to serve Krishna, not less enthusiastic.
Okay, thank you so much. Wonderful answer. Hare Krishna.
Thank you for the nice question. Yes.
Thank you, Madhav. So I believe I'll just see if anybody else has another question. I think Prabhakar Prabhu, do you want to speak now? Are you able to speak? Okay, I see you are on mute, but we can't hear you.
Rakar Prabhu, we're trying to call you on the phone. If you can answer the phone and tell us your question, we can repeat it here. Gopal Govind Prabhu or somebody's trying to call you.
Okay, so he's taking a little longer time. So I'll just take, okay. Ramchandra, you wanted to ask something?
I'll let Poonam go first, then I'll come.
Hare Krishna.
Yeah.
Yeah, I just heard the answer for, Madhava. So can you please explain with another example the difference between spiritual humility and materialistic humility?
Yes. So spiritual humility and spiritual gratefulness is when Krishna gives us suffering, we are, when we are in a difficult situation, we're grateful for it and we're offering Krishna obeisances. Whereas material humility is that when Krishna gives us something good or anyone else gives us something good, then we're very grateful because we want that good thing and we want more of it. So spiritual humility is not based upon our own enjoyment. It's not based upon a fruitive mentality that I'll be humble or grateful if I get good results as a result of that. It's based upon real knowledge that I'm a servant of God, I'm a spirit soul, and I'm very tiny and Krishna's very great. And it is my intrinsic nature to love and serve Krishna and his devotees. And I'm very, very tiny in that, in relation to Krishna. So spiritual humility is based upon knowledge. It's based upon the facts. It's based upon how things are actually the way they are. That truly, I am Krishna's child, and in this way, Krishna is the owner and controller of everything. I should just serve Krishna. Material humility is materially motivated, or it has some motivation in mind.
So you mean when we are, being humble or something, if there is some like, for own benefit, that means it's materialistic.
Yes,
Okay.
exactly. Yes. Or if that humility is making us, enjoy our senses more, like Madhava was saying, then now I can be lazy. I don't have to serve Krishna because, I really can't do anything for him. So I'm not even going to try because I'm so humble. So that's for my own sense enjoyment. I'm applying humility for my own, own happiness, not Krishna's happiness. So that's why a devotee can be very, in fact, Bhakti Siddhanta Saraswati Thakur said that with materialist and false brahmanas, like Shukracharya, like we see in Bali Maharaj's example, with materialist, with the outsider, karmis, we should not display our humility. We should display humility, particularly among devotees, because with the materialist, like Prabhupada said, lion outside, lamb at home. With the materialist, we need to give them the spiritual knowledge, and that is humility, because they've forgotten their relationship and their service to Krishna. And everyone is connected to Krishna in their service. So we don't display the humility, therefore. The problem is that most of us, we become a lion at home and a lamb outside, right? Where, when it's time to preach, we're like, oh, do you want a book? I'm not sure if I can do. And at home among devotees, we're very, very, very quick to find fault or point out mistakes. So we flip it around. But we can be a lion outside, like Hanuman. He did not display humility to Ravana. He displayed great, almost pride. He displayed power because he had to do that as a servant of the Lord. And he displayed his humility to Lord Ram and to Lord Ram's devotees.
Okay. I think we need another lecture on, this. This is quite interesting.
Yes.
We need a better example. I mean, this is better, but I think we need more knowledge on that. I think we are weak in this subject area.
Yes. No, I'm sure that the subsequent classes will expand on this more. Yes.
At least, I mean, to me, I'm still, kind of confused. The actual distinction. How do we, where actually, how do this is a very good example that you said. But Hanuman was not showing his humility when in front of the Ravana, but he was showing in, he was showing pride, right? It's very good, like example how to pretend in the world, like, and also like, this one point when you said, when you are in difficult situation, you should be basically chanting and remembering him, and thanks for giving that situation, or like what was your comment in relation to spiritual humility in that?
So when a devotee is in a difficult situation, the devotee is not reactive, but is reflective. The devotee reflects, what is the cause of this? And many times when we're in a difficult situation, we cannot change it. If we can, we try to change it, but we cannot, right? So in such a situation, the devotee offers obeisances to the Lord. He takes more shelter of the Lord, understanding that this is due to my past karma, and he doesn't blame the Lord. And because he knows that in that difficulty, it's an opportunity to remember God, because in happiness, we forget God, in difficulty, remember God, he is grateful for it. So that's why the two parts of that verse was offering obeisances to Krishna, and being grateful in those circumstances.
Mm-hmm.
Yes, these are big topics. They take time to digest.
Yeah. But
And
yeah,
I
we
would
look
actually
forward
recommend
for
you,
more.
I can point you to, it's online. It's Romapadas swamiyatras.com, something like this. The full 3-day retreat is online. And many of these points that you're asking were discussed in that retreat. And this is why it took 3 days. So there's a lot of lectures out there that further discuss this.
What can you please repeat that? What is the? I'm on the computer actually. So Roma.
Romapada Swami Yatras, something like that. Your local devotees can.
Yeah, we will send you, Poonam Mataji, I'll send you the information.
Okay, no problem. Yeah, I don't want to take more time. Thank you so much.
Purvamati Mataji has sent it on the text, so you can follow that also. And don't feel yourself as left. We are all on the same boat. We all have these questions, and you have a wonderful, beautiful conversation. I'm so happy that you are having this conversation. But time is limited, so I think we need to give opportunity to other devotees as well.
Of course. Yeah. Hare Krishna.
Yeah, thank you so much. And I think we have questions from Dheeraj Pal Prabhu as well. Dheeraj Pal Prabhu, are you ready for the question?
Yeah, yes, Prabhuji.
Okay, right.
Hare Krishna, Prabhuji. Dandavat Pranam. Prabhuji, my question is related to humility by Vaishnavas. Is exactly, I mean, the example you gave about Hanumanji, that he was lion in front of Ravan, and he was like very humble when he is talking to the devotees of Lord. But being a devotee of Lord, who is the Swami of Tribhuvan, how should a devotee treat? I mean, if your Swami is a Swami of a Tribhuvan, and how you can be considering yourself as a worm in a stool.
Yes.
So how
very good question. Yes. How to combine those two? This is a very nice question. So the devotee is proud, or so to say, the thing that the devotee knows is to his credit is that he's the servant of the greatest master. So we know that we are the servant of the greatest master, but that doesn't mean we should think that we are the greatest servant. Right? Those are two different things. And this is the mistake that we make. We think I'm the servant of the greatest master, or I have the best guru, and therefore I'm a great person. So our guru or God becomes part of our false ego. Yes, I have the greatest guru. Yes, I have the greatest Lord that I'm serving, but I am still a very neophyte servant. I still have to learn so much. Now, these feelings of humility that the great devotees have, this is because of their nature, their sweetness, their softness, they express like this. But they are very confident in their service to the Lord, like Hanumanji, right? They do the greatest things, but when they come before Lord Ram, they say, in front of you, I'm just a worm. I'm just an ant. And there's one folk story. It's not exactly in Valmiki Ramayana, but maybe there. But I don't think so. That there's this little spider, and when they were making the bridge, and Hanumanji was putting these big boulders in, and this little spider was putting grains of sand on the bridge, and Hanumanji kind of laughs at the spider when seeing, oh, okay, we're making this big bridge, and he's putting a speck of sand in. And then Lord Ram tells him, he says that, do you know that your service, that this spider's service is as dear to me as your service? And your service is not any more important than the spider's service. Because we forget that God has the power to do all the work himself. Lord Ram didn't need Hanuman's help. He could have made the bridge himself. So what he wants is our love. And at that point, Hanumanji forgot that he's even smaller than a spider, right? He forgot that. So therefore, Lord Ram corrected him. He said, don't become proud now. I gave you this potency because you are my unalloyed devotee. But now don't think that this is your power. I gave you this potency. And don't think that you're better than the spider devotee of mine. So this is, the devotee therefore has this consciousness that I may do the greatest things for the Lord, and they do the greatest things for the Lord. But still, in front of the Lord, I'm still a spider. I'm still smaller than a spider.
Thank you, Prabhuji. So the way I'm interpreting it is like, yes, because your Swami is great, and in that sense, you can relate yourself. Yeah, you can glorify your Swami, but you can't glorify yourself because you are the servant, and treat yourself as a servant.
Yes, wonderfully said. Thank you. Yes.
Okay, thank you, Dheeraj Prabhu. I think we have some more questions going around. So Ramchandru, you want to go ahead with your question?
Sure, thank you. Hare Krishna, Gopal Prabhuji. Thank you so much. We'll take liberty to ask more questions if it's okay, since you're about 2 hours behind us. So it's not that late, but if we have something, then we can obviously stop. I have 2 questions. One is that you being in a temple president role, a management role, you've been as a student in ISKCON and various roles. So this topic of humility, many times we see that knowingly or unknowingly, somebody is by body, by action and words, is not being humble. And you know that by doing that, forget about you being hurt or us being hurt. We know that it's going to it's going to hurt them in the long run. It's going to hurt them. So you want to kind of correct them, but at the same time, we do realize that the person is not mature enough, because if we say something, they will do more offensive, or they will not listen and do or say something which will hurt them even more. So you're kind of in a dilemma that don't say, hurt, and say maybe more hurt. So how would you handle such situations?
Wow. Well, actually, I mean, your question is also a comment, Prabhu. You're actually reminding me of something very important, and just something today happened that that illustrates what you have said. That sometimes when we give good advice to someone who's not ready for it, it becomes worse, right? They actually become more offensive, or they're not ready to take it. And I noticed this about the advanced devotees in ISKCON, that sometimes they don't say much, or they don't really, even they see something wrong, they don't go and tell that person much, because they know that we have to realize it internally. Like, people will know what is right, but they cannot practice it. They cannot do the right thing, and because it's internally they haven't realized it. In such a state of mind, in such a situation, when we see that someone's not ready and they're doing it we may try to just engage them more in service so that their heart eventually gets purified so they come to that point, or engage them more in the general process of hearing and chanting and reading. So we do have to help them also, right? We have to do something. So like sometimes in Prabhupada, someone was really having difficulty in their spiritual life, Prabhupada would tell them chant 64 rounds, because it was almost like they were offensive enough where they couldn't serve with devotees and things were too difficult, complicated for them. So Prabhupada said, okay, just sit in one place and just chant. And it helped that devotee. Or read more, or do more sadhana, or maybe tell them a story in the scriptures that illustrates a similar situation, a pastime that illustrates a similar situation. But you're absolutely right that sometimes giving advice is worse than not giving advice, because it makes the person more like offering milk to a serpent. It makes them more venomous. And you can't help that person. It's so sad. You want to, but you cannot. So in that way, we can help them by just engaging them in a process that will help cleanse the heart.
Thank you. The second question is that sometimes the mind takes over and thinks about being practical. So humility is required, but hey, listen, in this situation, let me just be practical and just say it out loud and on the face. And that's also not very nice for Vaishnava, especially. Practicality really is not, yes, in practicing Krishna consciousness, sometimes we need to be practical. I have to associate with my work people. I have to be practical how I dress and things. But when dealing with especially senior devotees, Siksha gurus, and even Diksha gurus, not to become familiar, and just be practical and let your mind say, be practical. How do you handle that?
So Prabhupada specifically mentions that serious offenses, like offenses are made, like you're saying, even unknowingly, and we get reactions for them and we have to avoid them as far as possible. But serious offenses are offenses that are motivated by envy and greed and lust. So when we do something with the motivation of envy, let me destroy this person, let me pull this person down in a way to try to pull myself up, that's more serious offenses. So to your point, I mean, we can't be too afraid also, because we have to do our service. We have to push on the Krishna conscious movement. We can't overdo that principle. But to your point, we should err on the side of not offending and being humble, right? If we have to err, generally we have to err on one side. So the practicality is there, but if we have to err in terms of our practicality, in terms of speaking to that devotee, we should err on the side of being more humble than more assertive. So that's the safe route to take. Prabhupada was practical. I mean, Prabhupada never acted out of envy or greed, and if a devotee was doing something wrong, he pointed it out. But Prabhupada made it very clear. He said that I can do certain things that you cannot, right? So we have to see our position, our role, and we can even speak up to a senior devotee. We can reveal our mind to a senior devotee, but as we were discussing, the method is very important. We should not, well, this person's senior, so I won't, so they can do anything they want or it's wrong. No, but also then when we express it, we need to say it respectfully, knowing how much service they've done for Prabhupada and Krishna. We just have to express it in a humble way. And also another thing is that when a senior devotee does something wrong, then a good way to handle it is to go to another senior devotee who's equal or more senior than that person and express our difficulty to them and let them speak to that devotee. Because even though it's a wrong thing, we may not be the right person to do it, and therefore it'll still be wrong for us to say it. So someone else senior, we can express our mind and say, look, I have this doubt. Did this person do this wrong? And if they say, yes, this is wrong, then they can handle it. Or they may tell us, look, no, you misunderstood this person, and they may fix it for us. And I've done this before. Like, I had a problem with, I had a question or issue regarding a sannyasi who was clearly far more advanced in an advanced position than me. So rather than I directly confronting or speaking to the sannyasi, I spoke to my GBC and expressed this problem. And then the GBC filtered it. They said, well, you're right here, but you are wrong here. And the part that I was right on, they spoke to the sannyasi. So that also protects us, because the other senior devotee will tell us, look, no, here you're right, or you're completely wrong, or yes, you're right in this way. And so here, I'll talk to them like this. Yes. Thank you.
Thank you, Prabhuji. That was a beautiful conversation. Many things to learn. Prabhuji, you have a few more minutes. I think Gail Mataji wants to ask something. So, Gail Mataji, you can go ahead if you have questions, just in case. I saw your raised hand. So,
yes, Hare Krishna, Prabhu. It was just a comment that I welcome your feedback on concerning humility. I found that one thing that helps me is to define the understanding that I've gotten from others is to define humility as, doing what Krishna wants in a situation, rather than serve Krishna rather than serve your ego, basically. And so in any given situation, humility might require you being very assertive, like a lion, in service to Krishna. But in another situation, serving Krishna might mean, taking the lamb role. So, if we test our response by, am I serving Krishna by my response, or am I serving my ego by my response? To me, that is like a litmus test for humility. Humility means serving Krishna, not my personal, gratification. So yes, I don't know how you
very
feel
nice
about
point. Thank you. Yes, thank you for that comment. Very nice point. And one way that we can further confirm, the only feedback I have to this comment is that the one way we can confirm that this is serving Krishna's desire rather than my desire is to also, take the opinion of our guides and mentors or spiritual master. Because sometimes in my own life, I've seen Maya is very slick, and I think I'm serving Krishna by doing this, but actually I'm not realizing I'm serving my ego by doing this. So advanced devotees are able to help us and say, no, Prabhupada was liberal in this case. You don't need to step in here. It's okay. Or no, you need to say something. This is service to Krishna. Like you're saying, be the lion. So we, in the initial stages of bhakti, we need the guidance of a devotee, a living devotee near us, around us, who can help us. And we can even just ask another devotee for their opinion before, like Prabhupada used to do. What do you think about this? Is this correct? Are you also thinking that this is something like this? And do that, yes. So it just, we have to be careful with devotees, that, very careful that, okay, is this really my service to correct this devotee or not? But yes, if we get clear direction and we do it in a humble way, then yes, it is.
Thank you, Prabhu. Thank you for your feedback.
Thank you for your comment. Thank you.
Thank you, Prabhu. So this was wonderful discussion. And one more question from Rukmavati Mataji. Okay. Go ahead, Mataji.
Question about the humility, like this is a quality. So does this quality emerge from the soul, or is it from the modes of material nature? Like I haven't come across any verse in Bhagavatam that says that humility is a quality of the soul, or So where does that these qualities, the good qualities, and is it because we have forgotten Krishna and now we are remembering Krishna, and that's why the humility should emerge? So could you please elaborate?
Yes. So His Holiness Radhanath Swami Maharaj says that humility is bhakti. It's not even that it's a part of bhakti or it's this, but true humility is bhakti. And in the Gita, Krishna defines humility as the first item of knowledge. So bhakti is within our heart. So humility is also in our heart. But due to the conditioning, it's covered. Due to material conditioning, it's covered. And the false ego has taken over. So when we revive our bhakti, if it's genuine bhakti, it should also revive our humility. And when we get genuine knowledge, the first item of knowledge is humility. So humility is transcendental, as Krishna's energy. It's part of the process of bhakti, and it rests in the soul. Bhakti rests in the soul, in the heart. In the same way, humility rests in the soul. It's natural to the soul. But currently we're in an unnatural state. Rather than being servant, we want to be master. That's our disease. That's our unnatural state. So once we revive that, once we realize the pure spirit soul, then the pure spirit soul, like you're saying, it's naturally humble. Pure spirit soul, once it's free from the gunas, will exhibit humility.
Thank you so much, Prabhu. Hare Krishna.
Thank you. Hare Krishna.
Thank you. Thank you, Rukumati Mataji. This conversation has been so nice. It feels like it should go on for the whole night, looks like. I'm pretty sure everybody is enjoying it so nicely. But time has its own restrictions. So we'll like to go towards the completion of this session today. And I've just started to conclude with a few of the takeaways I learned in this, especially the punchline I heard Prabhuji's presentation. Pride and offense separates us from Krishna, and humility and submission unites us with Krishna. Just following these two rules with the definition as Prabhuji gave us, humility means to accept deeply and genuinely everything, whatever seemingly good or bad, as the loving mercy of Krishna, and to engage everything in his service, knowing him to be the controller and enjoyer of everything. So that kind of completes the many of the questions which you have answered. They are circling around the explanations of the definition you presented in the nice session today. And I'm pretty sure everybody is benefited. And memory has many faults, may not retain in memory, but we'll pray and practice this.